And lawyers, guns, and money.
Now, okay. And last but not least, Dan, we'll bring us home with our third topic. Try to keep this one pretty tight, but obviously, if we can get a wrestling topic in there, we will do it. So Vince McMahon, about a week or two ago at this point, sent out a letter to WWE performers. There was a heated phone call on a random Sunday night that the product needs to be rejuvenated. And then a couple days later, McMahon, some wondered why, sent out we'll say an interesting letter that performers needed to no longer be involved with outside third parties. So I'm just going to read you a quote from this letter. Some of you are engaged with outside third parties using your name and likeness in ways that are detrimental to our company. It is imperative that these activities be terminated within the next 30 days, parentheses, by October 2nd. Continued violations will result in fines, suspensions, or termination at WWE's discretion. So if you're wondering what I'm saying or what McMahon's saying by outside third parties, that includes Twitch, it includes Cameo, and it includes even something like TikTok. Now we can get into, and Dan, if you want to ask me, I probably know the wrestling reasons behind that, but let's first talk about the legal ramifications behind that. Do you think McMahon has any ground to stand on with this ban of third party platforms?
He can do whatever he wants. I mean, he owns he's the majority owner, principal owner of a major company that has significant bargaining leverage and economic disparity that greatly favors the WWE in its contractual and business relations with their quote unquote independent contractors. If you don't like it, you're free to take your wrestling tights and go somewhere else. Unfortunately, there isn't a somewhere else that has the same cachet as the WWE. So he could do whatever he wants.
AEW is getting there. AEW is getting there. We're getting close. Keep going.
The real issue, and I understand that his principal argument is that the WWE invests significant resources in creating these storylines, developing the characters. I mean, Roman Reigns, that's a character and a storyline that's the WWE's intellectual property. It does not belong to the individual who plays Roman Reigns. So on one level, he has a really strong economic proprietary interest in preserving and protecting his intellectual property rights. But he runs a real risk here of jeopardizing the relationship between the WWE and their wrestlers, which historically has been categorized as one of being an independent contractor status. These wrestlers have long tried to argue that they're employees. They've sued the WWE unsuccessfully over concussion-related issues and employment-related issues, and have strenuously argued that they're employees. But court after court after court has resisted that argument and found them to be independent contractors. So how this plays into the latest news is that the courts have devised all these different tests for what constitutes an employee versus an independent contractor. There's a lot of case law out there on it, and the prime quality or the major factor or criterion of an employee is the right to control their activities. And what Vince McMahon is doing here is adding a layer of control over what these employees are capable of, or what these independent contractors can or cannot do with respect to their activities outside of the WWE. And the more that McMahon imposes requirements like that on his wrestlers, it begins to shift, or at least go down the continuum from independent contractor to employee, and that could have significant legal repercussions for the company that don't otherwise exist today.
So I think I want to give McMahon all the credit in the world that this, he's taking advantage of his platform. But I will say, Dan, on a wrestling level, because I'm 32 years young. I grew up in the Attitude Era. And, I dabble in people watch. My wife watches Real Housewives. I don't think a little AEW, a little Monday Night Raw hurts anybody.
Who's your favorite wrestler?
I'm a pretty diehard Chris Jericho fan. I've followed him for a number of years.
Who was the best? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, ask me my wrestling. Ask me right. Then I'll get back to
In the history of wrestling, who's the best that you've ever seen on the mic, on the in camera, on the interviews, between matches?
Dan, Dan? Do you know what the name of this podcast is? It doesn't matter what the name of this podcast is because it would be The Rock. I see. Tell by your face you didn't. I'm not insulting. The Rock would do this.
No way. The Rock was masterful.
False.
But
I don't know what you're about to
Man,
say. False.
Macho Man Randy Savage, first ballot Hall of Famer on the stick.
I think
nobody did it better.
I love Macho Man, but I just say we'll say The Rock. Let's say The Rock is a little more pure. But anyway, the reason I bring it up, McMahon, and as Dan has laid it out, has a lot of control over these wrestlers. But just with the new way that social media is trending, there is a wrestler that recently went to AEW. He got fired from WWE, went to AEW. Guy, you'll know him. Some people know him by this name Rusev. Has changed his name to this guy named Miro. So what wrestlers had been doing, and it makes sense under the brand, you'd build up a following on be it Twitter, Instagram, or Twitch. And then when you left the company, more often than not, you would get to keep your own social media. Sometimes you'd lose it. Sometimes you'd have to start from scratch. And, sometimes to Dan's point, they'd have your name. So you couldn't go ahead and use it. You'd have to start over. So this guy who's now very big in AEW basically used his WWE platform to build up his Twitch account. That's the video game streaming platform. And then he used that to kind of leverage a new deal with this company, AEW. So now there's, at least from my vantage point, there seems to be a lane for wrestlers to, change their career path or maybe build a platform that the WWE has no control over. One of the WWE's main stars, a guy by the name of AJ Styles, announced that he was diagnosed with COVID-19 on Twitch, completely off of a WWE-controlled network. So when McMahon is saying, and we probably should have shouted out the podcast, that there is conduct. Well, he didn't say exactly, but he says using your name and likeness in ways that are detrimental to our company. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but if people are making big announcements and there's a lot of eyeballs attracted to a certain platform that's not controlled by WWE, maybe that is viewed as detrimental. So I think this is another mechanism of control. I think it's McMahon trying to get a stranglehold on influencers and trying to make money in a way that is not traditional that WWE controls. So the question is, legally, can he pull it off? I mean, it sounds like he's going to get away with it.
Well, he has been getting away with it his entire career. I mean, every lawsuit involving the WWE is filed in the District of Connecticut federal court. And if you were to take a look on Westlaw as to the outcome of those cases, the WWE is basically undefeated in the District of Connecticut. It has
like Goldberg once upon a time, but keep going.
Right, but everybody loses, even Bruno Sammartino, the Hulk. But in the court of law, the WWE
not when he's angry. The Hulk doesn't lose when he's angry.
But in the judicial system, the WWE has won time and time again in front of these federal courts in Connecticut. And I think McMahon's emboldened. First of all, his personality, his attitude, and they're backed by just a significant legal team. I mean, they just pummel people in federal court cases. So I think he feels that no matter what he does, he's going to win in the end, and the courts will uphold any decisions that he makes. But certainly, as he begins to exert more control over what these wrestlers do in their free time or what they don't do in their free time, it begins to look more and more like an employer-employee relationship. And that's something that the WWE has fought for years. But a decision like this or an action like this really could begin to chip away at that wall between independent contractor and employee.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. This is not one that Dan and I are probably going to hear that much about because there's not much attention being paid behind the scenes. And normally, as we've seen in the history of wrestling or maybe even any company, if you speak up against a particular policy, they might show you the door. So I don't think we're going to hear any wrestlers push back on that. But as always, you'll hear it from us if we do. So Dan, I think that puts us in the books for this episode of Conduct Detrimental. You have anything to add before we officially close the door?
Yeah, we have an appearance together this week. I just saw a tweet from you earlier today. So let's like stand-up comedians. Let's plug our future appearances. We're both going to be a panelist at a virtual law school event for Florida Coastal School of Law, sports law in 2020, featuring you, me, Justin Sievert, and a number of other sports lawyers that we all know. And you don't need to be a student. You don't have to be a law student. You don't have to be a lawyer. You just need to register or sign up for this. It's a free event, and we'll take what we do here on Conduct Detrimental and amplify some of these issues even further. Running probably the Big Ten will be a big highlight. Maybe Zion Williamson will touch upon some of these issues, but it's a freebie. And if you have an interest, just check out Dan's Twitter feed or my Twitter feed. We'll promote it, and we have been promoting it, but it's this Thursday, September 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And most importantly, it's open to all, and it's free.
I think one more shout out before we close it up. A quick shout out to Mike Lawson, who edits our podcast and runs some of our social media platforms, and Karen Sharma, who runs our YouTube account. Those two were both very instrumental in the success of our last episode. The biggest in the Dan L and Dan W era. Maybe not the biggest in the Dan W era, but at least the biggest in the new era. So Dan, with that being said, as always, Dan Wallach is over on Twitter and Instagram at Wallach Legal. Myself, Dan Lust, at Sports Law Lust, the show, Conduct Detrimental at Detrimental. And as always, it does help to leave a review, phone a friend, phone a wrestler, and we will see you next week on another episode. Dan, you do it. I like when you do it.
See you next time on Conduct Detrimental, episode 61. Have a great week, everybody, and see you next time.